So what did you say the name of the doctor was?
Glick, G-L-I-C-K.
And that's in Albany?
He's at Ortho, New York. Could be anywhere in the Capital District. That's her, I think that's her DSS one.
This one is her work.
I think so.
Yeah.
Picked up my best ball here. Lock their ball. I have it for my patients. I don't have it for anybody else.
Which is good.
Not as
only a part-time.
St. John's? Oh. Yeah, right. Until you get out there.
I did, right.
An hour later.
Be on the back page.
It would be nice if
Quiet, nothing happens.
I'm not a civil defender, but I'm actually focused on
That widespread. Right, yeah.
but I'm not getting
I drove in the area, but it's just so booked on your yeah.
try to resolve
I take it you know the area.
I would imagine.
It's more than first responders.
You have a list of contacts great for our county.
You're not getting
Start. I love it. Can you do mail them out? They figured they kind of got away. It's kind of I heard you guys replaced your bay doors with revolving ones. Here's hoping. So how was Saturday? Okay?
good job.
Busy, but good. Yeah.
That was a good busy day.
Poor Randy turns I left 84 degrees Santa Barbara to come to 8-degree total skip. It's all good.
Well, that just shocks your system a little bit.
Just a bit. All right. You're in Johnstown, New York.
They didn't cover
Relax, you'll be fine. Any additions, deletions, revisions to the minutes from March 20th? All right, hearing none, minutes are approved as written. New business, the philosophical first question, I think we should, can we just put that at the bottom? Okay. We'll deal with sort of more concrete matters. That's all right. So somebody has a question about abbreviations. It's a good question. Is that person here?
Yeah. About the abbreviations?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's Charlie Caruso down there, from JVAC. So Charlie, I'll let you explain what your concern is.
Oh, this basically refers to narcotics. I know hospital policy is never to have acronyms for, like morphine, you just don't put MS and so forth, so there's no confusion. And I was wondering, when we do our checks, we should use abbreviations still, or write the entire drug out, so there's no confusion.
How does it happen in ePCR? Do you have electronic PCR?
We do at Mobile Life, you have to write the entire drug out.
You don't have
That's not in this
checkboxes.
region.
ePCR would seem to be the next solution because you have checkboxes for drugs. I don't know that there's a standard policy about that.
Howard, doesn't REMO have a approved abbreviation list on their website, or didn't they at one point?
A long time ago.
We had this discussion a really long time ago here too, but I don't think I ever remember it referring to MS.
Common medical standards now across the board are
Right.
just to write it out. So,
That was my concern, the common practice is to write the entire thing out.
Is that the consensus for now? It's certainly unambiguous.
I would say it could be addressed at the agency level, and you just say, you write it out.
I would think probably the best person to answer your question actually isn't here, and that would be Mary Ramo.
But you're right. Abbreviations need to be, if they're going to be used at all, need to be standardized. So for now, it sounds like the safest thing is to not abbreviate.
I think
Not abbreviate drugs.
the agency probably should have a policy, just write it out completely.
That's sufficient, yeah, that's
Okay.
fine.
Moving on, MAC sulfate shortage.
Yeah, Amsterdam Fire Department requested that we bring this up just for discussion purposes and to find out just how bad things are and et cetera.
MAC sulfate appears in the protocols for which, what?
Preeclampsia, profiles,
Asthma.
asthma.
We've used that a lot, actually.
We get our medications from the same place. The pharmacist recommended two things. They recommended we could extend the expiration date and continue to carry it. The other thing that we did, our other option was we could put 2 grams in 100 ml bags, and that's what we ended up doing. We just switched to the premixed. Honestly, it makes everybody's life a whole lot easier anyways. You just spike the bag and you're running in. So that's what we did. But we still carry the vials of it. It's just expired until they can get it.
They have 5 grams and 10 ml, which is good.
Did he tell you how long you could extend it?
I talked to him again yesterday, and he wasn't sure, and he wasn't sure when it's gonna be freed up, so.
How long you could extend the expiration date on the maximum?
I think the expiration dates, my understanding is that when the drug expires, the FDA, that it loses 10% of its efficacy. Over the next 7 years, it loses another 10% in general. So that's.
I don't know if we should be suggesting that we extend.
Yeah, I mean, for,
If
yeah,
you can
that's,
get something that's comparable,
that's why you
100
exchange
premix
drug
bag.
boxes, right? To get rid of the expired drugs.
they should just do what you're doing and get the premix bag.
Is it 2 and 100 on the state formulary?
The formulary was the point of discussion at CMAC on Tuesday. It got revised in the sense that all concentrations and dosages were removed. So just drug names.
So mag sulfate is on the formula.
Yes.
Oh, and all concentrations and dosages would be determined by regional protocol.
Correct. So feasibly they could get the premix.
You can't really make an exception anyway, but you just approve it here, right?
Approval.
Say that they can use the other mixture, the other concentrate.
Yeah. I mean, it's
It's common sense.
right. It's the same drug. You're not substituting drugs. Because you had to decide in other areas. There seems to be a general consensus that you can conform the protocol with concentration. Same mode of administration formula.
The only thing we're not doing, the only difference is we don't have to mix it. It literally makes our life a whole lot easier to have it premix.
All right, so don't take a vote on that. All those in favor? Okay. Moving right along, nitrous oxide. It's not in our protocol, right?
It's in the new protocol.
Maggie Wilson requested that we have a brief discussion about nitrous oxide and see what the doctor's feelings are on it.
So it's in the new protocol, and I wasn't sure if we were going to file a form to carry it, kind of like if you want to carry narcotics or if you want to carry the glucometer, before you had to apply for it and be approved. Is that going to apply to the nitrous oxide? Is there going to be some guidance on it? Is there going to be a plan to figure out how much we used? It kind of just got thrown in the formulary, and then I've got a lot of questions coming in about it. Everybody wants to use it, but nobody knows how, where, why. How do you document it?
So
Is there another form?
I'm very ignorant about nitrous oxide. I know the drug, and I've had it used on me. But I don't know why we're talking about using it on ambulance. So can somebody tell me why?
It's been in worldwide, a big AMS is worldwide. The big fans of it. They do a 50-50 premix, then nitrous oxide and oxygen. The one device that they do, field juice has a mixer valve that prevents if the nitrous runs out, it just delivers 100% of oxygen. It's a self-administered thing. Like short acting.
I work for an agency that carried nitrous down in Florida. Pediatric patients especially, with injuries, bike accidents, stuff like that, with pain and stuff, instead of starting lines and pushing more MS or whatever, nitrous oxide worked great. I mean, they self-administered, they just kind of dropped the mask, and we had to sign it in the morning, sign it out at night. There was gauges on it, that,
Does it fall under controlled substances? It doesn't. So I guess it would fall to medical directors to sort of figure out how they would implement it if they wanted.
In an instruction program?
I think that, in general, EMS is an extension of the emergency department. There are some returns that might be using nitrous. I would see most do not. So you're starting a therapy that won't be continued at the hospital with all the rigmarole that goes with. So I don't know how you're going to get replaced. I don't know who's going to biotech the device. And so those are my thoughts about it. When we tried to introduce it actually many years ago in Cooperstown, and the anesthesia guy didn't have it fit. That's their burden. So it wasn't implementable. And we have somebody else alternative training, but it is all you have. Different routes to give things these days. So the pressure for it, I have a sense of tremendous pressure for it, especially since ALS is required to carry other agents, such as fentanyl. Shall it be carried, I think, is really determined by.
So it won't be a regional approved thing, it'll be just a medical director approved thing?
I mean, it's in the formula, it means it's available for implementation. Protocol is the protocol. You know, if the medical director wants to write a protocol. So does the nitrous oxide appear in protocol?
Yeah, it's at the AEMT level.
It does not say, it says it's not mandatory, I believe.
And where does it appear as analgesic?
Yeah.
Right, so that's the status.
So, okay, medical director approval, and if you want a training program, I need a little bit more guidance as far as,
I'm sure the sole vendor in the world would be happy.
oh, I have no problem with getting it, it's just a matter of how you're gonna want to keep track of how much is there and.
Yeah, that's why it's not, well, it's not a controlled substance, so.
Right.
You know, the crew can, bring it to the barbecue. I mean, it's a.
Should I put that in the?
If it's not a controlled substance, it sounds like there's no real accounting requirement from the state.
And if that's the case, we definitely, I really don't think we should be putting it on trucks if it's not going to be accountable, people aren't going to be monitoring it. Because I know the way it made me feel. And, you know, I think I would, if I had a canister in my house, I would, this is great. This is great.
You know, remind yourself every night.
Yeah, you know.
And that day.
You know, we definitely need to have an accounting of it.
Why
Yeah, I
would it
think
be
there's gotta
accountable
be
to the medical director or some form of accounting somehow, some way?
If implemented.
If it's,
So accountability will be up to the medical director? Is that what you want?
that would, I think that would be some way of accounting for it, yes.
So I guess we can phrase it that if there's a medical director that seeks to implement it for their agency, they have to come up with a guideline.
There's a training PowerPoint right here online that I just found.
Yeah, I'm sure that you can find a bunch.
About accounting for the use of it.
Procedure,
It's easy to get, turn it on.
documentation, security.
It does have some, yeah, well, and those systems that never fail are 100% safe. But I think that's where anesthesia got a little bit anxious. Her oxygen canister is dead. The valve doesn't shut off. Now you're not giving oxygen.
So it wasn't too long ago, I had a patient from Little Falls Hospital, and the physician asked me if we had nitrous oxide. He had degloved his arm and stuff, and he was in pain. I said, no, we don't carry it. I had orders for 5 milligrams of MS every 15 minutes all the way to Syracuse. We don't carry it enough, so they gave me a vial to draw it up. And the patient was definitely in pain, and he needed something. He thought that nitrous oxide would work. I think on a long transport, it would be beneficial under circumstances like that.
All right, so if you're going to use it, come back to REMAC with some guidance as to how it's going to be controlled.
The REMAC or the medical director?
Medical director to the REMAC about how it's going to be controlled.
Oh, the medical director has to tell the REMAC how
Yeah,
it.
so you're going to
Okay.
use it, we'd like to hear how you're going to use it.
So you'd like to see our plan then?
The medical director. Sorry. All right. Revised protocols are rolling out.
We have been approved, as you all saw with your email, we've been approved for the collaborative protocols begin on February 1st, rolling them out on February 1st, and I just thought I'd put that in the agenda to see what the doctors had in mind. Did you want to do it on an agency, let it go on an agency by agency basis with the medical director being in charge of the upgrading or updating.
What happened the last go-around? There were some regional hold-downs, right?
Well, let's go around with the first adoption of the collaborative protocol, so,
Yeah, that was a formal training program and, yeah.
yeah.
What's the, well, from the agency perspective, what do you think would work best?
I can tell you what we did. We took the REMO rollout and put all of our field supervisors through it. And every day at our staff meeting, our field supervisors are educating and testing our staff. So my staff is ready to roll. We've already done our program.
Tom, what kind of a rollout did REMO have? Did they have something on PowerPoint?
We did have a PowerPoint. I will get it to you. We'll forward PowerPoint.
Okay, I appreciate
It outlines all the protocol changes.
All right.
Does anybody?
I'll send it to Phil. I'll send it to Phil, and then we can get it.
Thanks, Phil.
Get it dispersed.
And we're going to be using GAVAX rollout and test and everything just for CMT as well.
Okay. So then on an agency by agency basis with the medical director overseeing it, is that agreeable to? Yeah, I'll send the rollout program around and they can use that or.
Should there be some sort of certification back to the region that the agency has completed it, so we don't have agencies that say, I didn't know we have new protocols?
Oh,
It probably shouldn't. It probably isn't a bad idea for the region to throw out a letter. The protocols take effect of this. Please, complete the following, and whether it's a form they sign off on and mail it back. Just saying that the agency has taken care of it.
Is there, Tom, did you guys have a quiz or exam associated?
We did.
Could we plagiarize that for the region and put it on the web?
We do that.
Sure.
We were going to do an in-service for it, not necessarily use their stuff, but we had one that's already made up. So as long as you're going through something, REMA doesn't have anything that they rolled out this and did being tested.
They did not, or they did?
They did not this time.
Okay.
We hold a higher standard in our region. I think if there's getting to Beth's question, not at the agency level, but at the provider level, you want evidence that the techs have actually used the protocol and passed the exam, that the web would be a way to do it, I would think.
You could do that. You could take. I mean, I don't know how difficult it would be to just upload our quiz to that testing database that we did for the original credentialing. So you could use the test questions. There's no sense in reinventing the wheel. I give the test to Phil. We somehow get that onto the website, no different than we do with the credentialing process, and just have the 2015 update and have them quiz that way if that's the way you want to do it. For me, I've done it. We've got it on file. We can certainly supply paper copies of the test if need be for.
So next question is, do we want to require the exam?
For the credentialing, we require.
Right, and now we're talking about people who are already credentialed. They're just kind of updating. First, I don't want to lay too many burdens on somebody's shoulders. This is somebody who's already in practice and qualified on our current protocols, and we're just updating to the new revisions.
So do you want them to attest?
The testing, let the agency attest, the agency's medical director's signature to attest that these persons have completed the rollout successfully. How's that?
I think what REMO did was that they turned around and simply said that the medical director and the ALS coordinator had to attest that the entire agency had updated to the new protocols and that the agency was online for it.
And I think that's what we did last time in this region. When it took effect, February 1st or something last time, and that was it. The agencies attested that.
We filled out a form that had all the people's names
Right,
and.
you probably have that still on the file. We did it at the last protocol.
We sent a video from Dr. Taylor last time.
So you want to repeat that, this go around?
I'm sorry.
You want to repeat what we did before?
We can, let the let the agency be responsible. If we send them the PowerPoint, let the agency be responsible by using that or any appropriate method, and let it be signed off on by whoever the tech in charge is and the medical director.
Okay,
Is
so
that okay?
educational materials and attestation and the medical director with the attestation. Is that what we said? Beth, is that what we did last time?
Yep.
Let's just do that. All right. Cherry Valley.
Cherry Valley has requested to begin providing ALS level of service. And back in November, we received their application to begin ALS level of service, and the doctors looked at it and decided to table it since they did not have any ALS providers currently on their roster at that time. Now, Aaron Van Buren from Cherry Valley is here today, and he wanted to come and make his case before the REMAC physicians.
I don't know that I want to make my case necessarily, but I'm just here trying to play monkey in the middle. I got a letter from Gene Taylor from DOH as far as getting covered for the cost of students attending the critical care class. And I received it from Bob O'Brien from the county stating that basically any BLS agencies that were sending students to the class with the plans of upgrading to an ALS agency had to apply for approval through you guys to become an ALS agency in order for the state to cover the cost of the students taking the class. As far as I spoke with Sid and Rich, I mean, I know there was some discussion as far as our narcotics. They've been generous enough to help me through the process as to working on devising a narcotics plan. Other than that, I mean, my only thought is maybe not necessarily saying we're approved to become an ALS agency as of today, but maybe have something in the books or have something that I can send to the state in writing or whatever that says pending completion of the course and having ALS providers available, that at that time ALS certification would be granted.
So it's a cart and horse issue, like you can't get students into the program until you're on the trajectory to become an ALS.
Pretty much what my understanding is, and I'm the guy that's taken the step to become the ALS provider. I'm trying to rebuild my squad. Since I took over 2 years ago, my membership is almost, well, we're over double, headed for triple. Would like to become ALS again. This is just my stepping stone to get there, so.
Is there somebody besides yourself that's interested in pursuing?
I do have 2 other newer members that are looking to do it. I asked, they were going to get into this course, but I asked them to please get at least 1 year's worth of EMT service under their belt before they signed up to become ALS. I have one gentleman that attended Cobleskill College. He's looking to go back and take their paramedic program, and the other one is looking to take the next ALS program that comes available. But I wanted them to have a little bit of experience under their belt before they just go diving into the ALS side of things.
So Mary, this is really a state funding issue. What does the state require to underwrite the expense of critical care enrollee?
They're supposed to be at that, the agency is supposed to be at that level.
So how do they get around the cart and horse aspect of it? Like they can't become that level until they have somebody at that level. See what I'm saying? It's a cart and horse thing, right?
The application requires a listing of who the ALS providers are in the agency, or who they will be in the agency. And it's kind of which, you're right, it's kind of which came first. If somebody gets certified at that level, you can't just put the application.
Which came first, the egg or the chicken?
So I guess we just need some clarification. We can probably take that offline. Okay. All right, moving right along. Now we're ready for the wide open philosophical discussion on what is a medical control facility. So let's start with the state. What do you guys think of medical control facility? Want to take that offline? No, it's a status that is part technical and have connections to the outside world, and we have to have REMAC approval facilities in the past, we've approved physicians in the past.
No, you approved facilities.
Facilities.
We did. Okay,
So the question comes, what are AAREMS medical control facilities?
just want a list.
Don't have a comprehensive list.
Right.
There's
Shouldn't take that long.
one hospital that in the past has not been a medical control facility.
Sydney, right, they
Yeah.
remain not a medical control
Yeah,
facility.
I've got, when I called Phil and asked, he said all Bassett's are, and I'm like, I don't believe so,
Not
because
Sydney,
O'Connor
not
isn't.
O'Connor.
Not O'Connor. And then we need to update the apps to reflect that. We need to update the apps, the iPhone and the Android apps,
Is the Android one even functioning yet?
not yet.
More
To
about
show that,
later.
I mean, they list all our hospitals as medical control when you hit the medical control button. When you look at some of the Hudson Valley hospitals, if you expand the list, it says, for example, that Harris Hospital, whatever that other, it's located in
Well,
Harris.
it's like calling the Albany VA for medical control.
Yeah, and it says not a medical control facility on the app. So right now, every single AAREMS facility on the app is listed as a medical control facility. I have new providers that are confused as all get out, who are calling hospitals that, to my knowledge, aren't medical control facilities. I can speak for Otsego and Delaware County, and I kind of checked some institutional history.
All right, hold on a second. So in our region, besides Sydney, which is called Tri-Town Regional Hospital, and O'Connor Hospital, are there any other hospitals that are not medical control facilities?
DVH.
Delaware Valley Hospital is not a medical control. O'Connor is not a medical control.
Right, that's what I just said.
Margaretville's not.
Margaretville's not.
Okay.
I can speak to those two counties. I can't-
Originally, I believe the criteria was they had to have full-time physician.
Right.
Right.
Okay, so DVH, Margaretville, O'Connor, and Tri-Town, any others in the region? All right, so if you pull up DVH in Margaretville, does it say not a medical control facility?
No.
All right, so we just need the app fixed. Who created the app?
We can pass that on to Tim Maravoli. He can
Just add not medical control into those.
Yeah.
If you look on the REMO site, there's a couple, I think, on the REMO site that it says not medical control facility. While it lists all the hospitals, it says not medical
So
control.
we just need to
That
add-
would just need to be added to, we did talk to Tim, Beth and I talked to Tim yesterday on it, and it's not an issue. We just need to provide him a list that isn't medical control, and we'll add that.
Okay.
And the other question is, I believe I've spoken to ER administration at Tri-Town, and what would be the process now that there's good, strong physicians down there to become a medical control facility?
I've spoken with the director there, and there's no intent to apply to the medical control facility. So I think for now, the list would be Margaretville, DVH, O'Connor, and Tri-Town, not a medical control facility, and make that modification that we have through our IT guy. We have an IT guy? Tim Maravoli, is he the guy who created the app? No, it's just somebody who knows.
Tim didn't create them, and I certainly didn't, and the folks who did are out in California, actually.
Okay, so it's just a request.
It's something that we need to do relatively soon. The protocol updates have just been sent out to the company that does the app, so the new protocols are being changed currently. So if we want to do this, it should be done in the next week.
All right, so Phil, can you find out where to send this message to California?
Sure, well, what I'm gonna do is, Tim Maravoli, right, plugged in with the folks up in California. He and I have had several discussions over the last 2 days about the app availability, the new app. And what I'll do is I'll just get a hold of Tim tomorrow morning and pass this word on to him.
Okay, just tell him there's some urgency, given the onset of the new protocols.
Well, he knows. Tim is the director for REMA.
I would CC like Dean or Mike Daly also on that, just so there's a record of it being sent to other people.
Okay, so does that answer the question? Oh, we decided what is not a medical control facility. That's good, it's easier. All right, Old business, update on Ebola preparedness.
Well, actually, we have, I don't know whether you call it old business or new business, but we have Mike Hartzell, the new emergency management director for Schoharie County, present, and Stacy Wojciechowski from Sharon Springs present, to continue the discussion about that accident issue, the MVA dispatch issue that we discussed in November. So would you want to deal with that now, or do you want to go on to Ebola?
No, we can take that in.
Okay.
Car crashes are more often common than Ebola.
Mike?
I guess I'm gonna have to, as every good leader, refer back to Stacy. I guess what were your questions on it? I've heard several different things about what happened and response times and.
There was some questioning about the dispatch protocols and whether they needed to be changed, as I recall.
I can tell you as I'm transitioning to EMS in Schoharie County, that is one of my top priorities right now is to look at how we dispatch it in 911. To get into details like what happened that day, I mean, I really can't. But I am transitioning, and I met with Joe the other day and some other people, but transition the way we do EMS in Schoharie County as a new director, so.
Okay. So at a high level, does 911 have some kind of software for emergency medical dispatch, like Priority 1, whatever that is?
They do have their protocols, and I have talked to the dispatch supervisor about that, and I actually met a couple weeks ago with all the EMS captains, and I really wanted to sit down with all of them and look at how we do business. And like I said, when I talked to the dispatch supervisor, we're going to go back through the radio committee, which we do every other month, to talk about those protocols and look at how we want to change stuff within Schoharie County. And response time being one of them. I mean, I sit and listen to the pager too, and the tones go out and tones go out and tones go out, and people, no response. I don't think that's what happened in Sharon Springs. I mean, I talked to Stacy, and she was responding too, so.
Yeah, I would just make sure that the county has an internal policy that says if it's an ALS call, that they put it out to more than one agency.
Yeah, I agree. Yes, I agree. One of the things I looked at too.
Maybe primary, but then there should be.
Well, and there should, and I look at right now the way we do business is we tone out and say we tone out a volunteer rescue. 3 minutes later they tone them again, and 3 minutes later tone them again, then they tone someone else. And one of my ideas, and you guys are the EMS experts, is that when we send out that second tone, it should be to a second agency. So we're providing the best care for the residents of Schoharie County. So we don't get those. So when the first one doesn't pick up, at least we got someone in the room. And hey, if the first one does, if they get in the station and go, yes, I am responding, we can always turn off the second one.
Yeah.
But
yeah, just like Dr. Daly likes to say that, asystole is the same in Buffalo as it is in Times Square. I think it's also true that a patient down doesn't care who responds.
No, I agree, and I say it all the time. The guy or gal grabbing his chest doesn't care if it's a volunteer, county ALS, or a paid service, really.
If I may.
And you have a medical director for the county as well, right?
What's that?
Do you have a medical director?
No, I am not.
No, do you have a medical director
Yes.
for the county? Right, so that'd be a joint effort to sort of look at any cases that come up about delay, I think. As we are experiencing in Otsego County, there's medical legal risk to the county for providing dispatch. So how you do dispatch and the fact that it's all collectible information, freedom of information, all that, it's not like there's no risk to how it responds. Sorry.
It's Stacy Wojciechowski, Sharon Springs. In particular with this call, there was some question about some discrepancies in times with response time. We actually had one of our EMTs who is also a medic for CMT. He was on scene within a minute. He lives on that road that this happened.
Stacey, I'm going to ask that we park the conversation just until this beginning to sound like a specific case review, which really falls under the umbrella of QI, which is confidential. That's not confidential.
Okay, I understand.
So we could go into executive session in a minute, and then we could hear the whole thing. So I'm not familiar with the case.
Okay.
If there's going to be action requested of the REMAC.
has there ever been a thought in Schoharie County of asking, like, a report from the agencies in the morning as to whether they have a crew available? Has that ever been on the table?
I don't know if it's ever been on the table, but I can tell you it's probably going to be on the table, and I had met with, and actually Bill Beavers and me talked about this several weeks ago, about having a punch list in the county and how we provide service and for the dispatchers, so they know,
Right.
you know, if that
way-
first agency doesn't respond, who's next on the list and who's in.
That
after
way,
that,
I mean, if they don't have a crew, and they know they don't have a crew, they could go right to the second agency.
I mean, I can tell you, and I've only been in this job for 11 months, and as a director of emergency service, I also have fire safety, emergency management, and I've just kind of doled into the EMS, and one of the things I don't know is I'm going a different direction with my coordinator for those, this type of stuff, the administrative stuff, is having a coordinator who understands this, and is just not a paramedic, and I think that's one of the things we need to do, and I see it, and we do have problems. I get it all the time, and I was talking to Scott on the way up here about it, and I'm talking to Bill about it, is I have a paramedic who calls in all the time and says, hey, if I'm needed, you know, I'm on today, and we get from one of the towns, and I usually get a nasty gram back from the dispatcher, if we need you, we'll call you, and I don't think that's really the way we need to do business. Again, it goes back to, like we said before, that patient doesn't care who responds, and they're not taking favoritism, and they could care less if they like the guy or dislike the guy at that time. So I'm really taking a hard look at this. Like I said, I started a couple weeks ago with meeting with the EMS captains, and I dove in to EMS hard.
I have some knowledge about dispatch. I came perilously close to being a medical director for a 911 system. But so the software, I think it depends on the software, but I recall I think Priority One is one of the major vendors. They had a QI package that was part of their software, and that required the medical director to sign off on it. So that's probably the highest level you could get to in EMD, which is using technology and review process to review the system regularly to try to improve it. So if you have that as a substrate, I think you have a pretty good foundation to turn on a PI process that may not exist. I think in some counties they haven't gotten to that level. So I think it should be encouraged, though, because I think it's the 911 is really that's when the clock starts. So we look at things like response time, and we're dealing with something like STEMI. It all adds up, right? We're going for like 120 minutes from onset to intervention for STEMI. The system needs to respond timely so that the patient has a real benefit from the system, and doesn't take the alternative, which is private vehicle to the nearest ER or convenient care or urgent care. So EMS should play an important role in those kinds of really time-dependent, life-threatening diseases such as STEMI, stroke, trauma, probably sepsis in the near future. Monroe Livingston is doing some research on pushing lactates into the field for early assessment of sepsis. So I think it'll never end. It'll just be, can you get there? But it starts with, can you get there in time, in a timely fashion? And what is the standard?
I don't know if that answered Joyce's question. While you're talking about mutual aid plans and who's going, is there a system in place that agencies allow the dispatch center to know they have an ambulance available for that day?
Not currently.
In Fulton
I
County,
mean,
instead of our second tone out, all the volunteer agencies, Fulton County EMS was toned out simultaneously with those volunteer agencies automatically first tone out. If we have BLS, ALS, we let them know. As soon as we answer the call, we'll be in route BLS. They know to continue with ALS. If we call a route with ALS, we identify that we're en route with ALS and they can cancel.
Right.
And that's the first tone out. We don't wait for a retone. So then there's no time delay on getting ALS to a patient at any time.
Or BLS even.
Well,
yeah, I mean, it's automatic,
In ALS, I'm usually pretty good about putting together a schedule, who has for ALS, who's on either. We have our county ALS, which we're going to have pretty soon 4 ALS people working, so we can almost do 24. And then I actually, and I work with Bill in rural Metro. We don't have coverage. I put them right on the schedule for 911, so they know who the primary is, and usually we're pretty good at that. And who the secondary is.
I mean, Broadhaven and JVAC, they usually call in the morning or evening that they're ALS until whatever time. Northampton, we usually don't have ALS on at night unless Jack goes during the day. But, we have that rapport with Fulton County Ambulance, and they know that. And, it's not like they're making it all the way up to Northville before they get canceled. There's no waste of time, but at least there's ALS en route to them, a patient immediately. There's no delay. I mean, I won't wait for a second tone out.
This state doesn't have a plan either, because I work for an agency that's right on the border. And they'll call Rural Metro, they call MOVAC, they call SMS, they call Little Falls, and we're listening to it on the scanner, we get up and put our boots on because we're the next in line, because we're the closest one. Saturday I had 2 calls in Dallsville. Nobody answered. Not even the first time. So so as far as a mutual aid agreement between even agencies or regions would be helpful.
Yeah, there's no doubt.
I think it's not just an ALS question, it's whether an ambulance is going to roll question. And, I think the idea, if you have a agency that's staffed full-time, and you have a lot of small agencies like you do in Schoharie County that may or may not have a crew, it's not a bad idea at all to dispatch both simultaneously on the first tone, and then the commercial or the full-time staffed agency can be canceled if the other one rolls. So it's not just an ALS question; it's an ambulance question. Is there going to be an ambulance rolling?
Have all of your dispatchers received formal training for dispatch, like EMD?
Mike, do you know if EMD has a medical director for Schoharie County? I mean, I know you guys do, but I think EMD is supposed to have one. I don't know who that is.
Yes.
So I think it's a good discussion, because it's sort of the beginning of the interface for the public. Just thinking about any system, right? So QI, one of the ways to think about a QI is structure, like how many process, how they get there, and outcome, things like response time. So a look at ALS conditions like chest pain and shortness of breath, and just start with that. You start from the back end, look at the outcome, and then look backward. But I think it's a good discussion. But I don't know, are there any county reps here that feel their 911 dispatching system is gold standard in terms of what's out there? No volunteers on that one. But there are, there are these systems that are held up as gold standards, right? The software guys obviously gold standard, but there are some pretty, sophisticated ways to do it, and technology has really afforded that, right? So GPS units on the ambulance and things like that really can make a difference.
The other thing about calling into the agency when Delaware County first started out with their 911, that was going to be part of the plan. Each one of the agencies was going to call the dispatch center every morning and tell them whether they had ALS or not. And they decided, of course, they use state police dispatchers, and they decided right then and there that wasn't going to be a good idea. Because
well, I think it would be a different kind of problem.
Yeah. But I mean, we still got a simultaneous dispatch for most of our agencies.
Then because the agencies chose that.
Yeah.
So our agencies got on board, formed the council, and then developed mutual aid plans, which have gone into the CAD. And then with the new CAD upgrades, when we upgrade to CAD 10, we can break that down even farther. So, like right now, when it flashes up on the CAD, it's in a little directional file at the very bottom of the screen. So you have to, as a dispatcher, take the time to click down and look at that little directional file at the very bottom of the screen and figure out who's mutual aid for what end of what district, and try to figure all that out. When they come up to the new CAD system, it's going to be integrated more into that. So it'll be more of an active way to do it. because that is, you know, it is a big problem. Delaware County is a big county.
Yeah.
And you can't just take a district and say, okay, so we'll go with my district. So Bloomville, if they're not available, then we're gonna go to Delhi. Well, that doesn't work, because Delhi is at least 20, 30 minutes from the far end of our district, so we had to take our district and split it. So again, it goes back to the agencies and then how your districts are set up. It mutually depends.
That's what they did with us. Everything west of Liberty Street went to Sharp Creek, everything.
Well, you have to, because your district is huge. So I think the CAD 10 will help a lot with that, breaking out districts, and it goes right back to software. The more software you have to help, the better off you are.
Well, feel free to reach out to counties that are up and running, maybe doing these little systems. We can talk. You know, I think Cobblesville Regional is the only hospital that's Carter County. All right, so any other business before we should probably go into executive session?
I have just one question. I haven't read the new protocol, so you can correct me. Regarding STEMIs, use of narcotics, if there's like an inferior wall MI, is it up to the practitioner to determine if we use morphine or fentanyl? What's your avenue on that? Right now the protocol says it goes under pain management. So regarding a STEMI, which is the preferred drug that you would like us to use, or it doesn't matter? I've read both reports on this. So
if you're going to use a narcotic with a STEMI, fentanyl is your drug of choice. If you don't have fentanyl, then of course morphine. But remember, those are vasodilators.
Well, yeah, both are. I mean, I
so if you're
understand
going
that.
to vasodilate, the idea is if you get nitro, then a pain management. Because if you can fix their pain using nitroglycerin, your patient's better off.
But if you have an inferior wall, you want to bolus them.
You want to bolus them, so you want to avoid anything that's going to vasodilate them, right? On an inferior wall line.
So the consensus is it doesn't matter, or what is it?
Consensus is use one.
Okay.
I mean, fentanyl is going to be, a better choice.
Absolutely.
Any hemodynamic unstable patient, there's no question. You're going to have less of a drop in your pressure.
Well, there's less histamine. I mean, the histamine, yeah, it's a factor with
The
that.
protocols don't speak to types of them. Okay, so I think we should probably go into executive session so we can hear about this.
Okay.
Any other business?
Just a quick update on the Ebola preparedness.
All right.
Agencies are slowly coming online, if you want to use that expression, as registering with the health commerce system. It is a slow process. The health commerce system is not altogether a user-friendly website, and it can be a little bit intricate. But I'm going to send out a reminder to the agencies this coming week.
Yeah, in our region, it's less than a snail's pace. People are not
It's a snail's pace all over the state.
I know, but we are, I would say we're the slowest.
So there was discussion about the commissioner's order for ambulances at the CMAC. And it was sort of an interesting message. So the message is the commissioner's order is the commissioner's order. There's no wiggle room. However, a region can decide who the core agencies within the region that will respond. So it doesn't have to be every single agency. They recognize, the DOH recognizes that every, as the director likes to say, East Elbow ambulance service has to get up to this level of preparedness with monthly drills and PPE and the whole 9 yards. The other way to organize within a region is to identify core ambulances, pre-identify them to the 911 systems, so that should the call come, that 911 knows not to dispatch East Elbow, but to dispatch the pre-designated responding unit. So SUNY Upstate, which is our regional designated center, so their protocol is to identify their responding unit for their hospital. So if they get a call, they might, and it won't matter about jurisdictions of territory. If if, I don't know who their partner is up there, but if it's rural metro will go where they're directed by the Department of Health to fetch a patient. That can happen at a regional level if the region comes up with a similar, approach, which is, CMT and GAVAC will be our responding units within our region, and we offer that to the state as our solution. And that might take the burden off of every ambulance, but we would have to come up with a plan regionally, and then get it forward to the Department of Health.
But guys, you got to step back a second. The commissioner's order, the big piece of the commissioner's order, and it's going over to DLA, Division of Legal Affairs, is every agency has to respond with 2 contact people through the health commerce system.
Right.
So even if the region agrees that they're going to have, Howard Hughes be the official Ebola response person.
Right.
Every agency, sorry Howard.
What did I ever do?
Go for it.
I heard that a county has a plan, thinking of county plans, that they send the medic in because they're disposable.
Yeah. Lowest paid employee.
But anyway, so every
That piece
agency
stays,
has
yeah,
to
yeah.
still, it doesn't shirk the agency of their responsibility to log on to the health commerce system.
Okay.
So it hasn't sent up the next step, what they choose to do with it. I mean, we can only assume that DLA will act upon this because it is a commissioner's order. And I think that message needs to get back to the local agencies. Even if you're in Maggie's agency and don't have internet service, you still need to sign up for it.
I'm registered.
You registered?
I'm registered.
I did use you as an example in our office.
That's the key, and to elaborate more on what Gus said, it's broken down into 2 separate sections. 911 calls and transfers. Transfers, interfacility transfers, we don't have to worry about. That is going to be done by DOH through agreements with hospitals and everything else. 911 calls is where we need to worry. So there still has to be some form of agency training. You still have to go through screening. Probably not a single PSAP. I mean, we learned quite a bit. PSAPs should be working with public health, be aware of these patients that are being tracked. I mean, we should have heads up on a lot more information than we have even at the time of dispatch. So if public health knows that somebody just came from Africa, that should be transferred and relayed to a PSAP. The PSAP should know that information upon dispatch, and we should be aware of it. So, but anyways, every agency is going to be responsible for at least the pre-screen, 6 feet away, pre-screening, and then when it comes time for transport, they have the ability to request a regional ambulance if need be for that 911 call.
Yeah, it seems like you'd move the triage point to the PSAP, right? So if the PSAP, you're right, the PSAP is supposed to already know if there's anybody in Schoharie County who the Department of Health is monitoring, and it's by way of the Department of Public Health. So county public health is supposed to be communicating with 911 or keeping an eye in this case. And if that patient or potential patient develops any sort of illness, not necessarily a fever, then 911 is supposed to know in advance who is going to dispatch.
And the reasons for this is not just because this patient may have come back, and maybe they're not calling you because they're symptomatic due to Ebola. Maybe they slipped on the ice and just split their head open, and they're calling you. And you have no way. You're not screening them for Ebola. You're not doing any of that stuff. So the PSAP should know, okay, this is a patient that is being under voluntary, watch, whatever else, and we should know that as EMS providers.
Are the PSAPs armed with the screening questions that are mandated at every emergency department? They are.
We talked about this at our last meeting, and they said Fulton County didn't think was doing any of that pre-screening. There was a concern that dispatch center wasn't doing it.
That was corrected after that last little tidbit that we had up here.
I know for Schoharie County, what I did was I sat down with the PSAP and a lot of the EMS and first responders, and I wrote a policy for the county, for all of EMS. It says, hey, look, even if you don't know that this person's on there and they got flu-like symptoms, and you go in and you start asking those questions, and they've been to one of those places in Africa, it pretty much says stop. Call myself, call the PSAP back, because the PSAP has a protocols. They'll call myself, who will call in turn the director of health, and we'll make that decision. Because again, I'm not going to dirty one of my volunteer ambulances dirty a hospital that they don't need to go to, just,
And they don't want, and they don't want that. You have to understand that all of these people that have, the nurses, everybody that's got sick it's all a training issue and doffing the gear, not when to don it, it's all about doffing. So that's why these regional facilities, upstate, they're going to use one specific ambulance service that they trained with. The same thing, no different than if, hypothetically, if Schoharie County has it and they call GAVAC for that, 9 out of 10 times, we're going to bring that patient to St. Mary's Hospital. That is who we drilled with, that is who we've trained with, that is who we are comfortable with, they are comfortable with. For us to go into Bassett, who's never worked with us and doesn't know anything, and we don't know them, the DOH doesn't want that either.
Well, hopefully the DOH, will weigh in, right? I think, depending on what they perceive as the risk, I think they'll weigh in very heavily about who's going to fetch that patient, where you're going.
I agree.
I can tell you that there was a patient, and the only reason I know this is because I did 20 plus days last month down on Ebola screening at JFK. There was a patient that came to a rural upstate community as opposed to, she went to her summer house. And the state said, we don't want that county health department handling it. We will handle it. So they are being very conscientious of the efforts and, what resources are available.
Right. New York is creating 11 designated centers. The feds only asked for 4. So it's kind of interesting. All right, so that's the update on Ebola. It's nice to think that undressing has finally risen to a very important skill. Any other business? Okay, so we'll do the executive session.
Okay.
We usually wander over here somewhere.
Yeah, I think the room next door is empty right now.
Here's your